My name is Nora Bennett. I was 17 years old when my father's wife poured the insulin keeping me alive straight down our kitchen drain. Vanessa stood over the sink with one of my vials tilted between her fingers. The clear liquid vanished so quietly that, for half a second, my mind refused to accept what I was watching. "You're too dependent on these shots," she said. "It's time to toughen up." She emptied the second vial before I could reach her. "Vanessa, stop. That isn't optional medication." She picked up my emergency insulin pen from the open supply case. I moved toward her, but she raised her other hand, warning me not to come closer. "You have that machine attached to you," she said, glancing at my pump. "You'll be fine. My pump is almost empty. That's what you always say when you want everyone running around after you." Then she pressed the pen over the drain and discharged it. I didn't scream. I didn't grab her. I just stood there with my hands shaking while the last drops disappeared beneath the metal rim. I had lived with type 1 diabetes since I was 8. I knew exactly what happened when my body stopped receiving insulin. Vanessa had attended appointments. She had been given emergency instructions. She knew enough to understand that this wasn't a test of discipline, but the expression on her face told me something far worse than ignorance. She believed she had the right to decide what my body needed. I checked my pump. The insulin left inside might carry me into the following day, but it would not last through the weekend. My backup supply was gone. I couldn't drive, and the nearest 24-hour pharmacy was across town. Vanessa picked up my empty medical case and pushed it toward me. "There," she said. "Now you can learn that you're stronger than you think." 3 days later, I was in intensive care with severe diabetic ketoacidosis. I remember fragments, the pressure of an oxygen line against my face, an IV taped to my arm, my father's voice breaking somewhere beyond the curtain. I remember trying to speak and discovering that even opening my eyes required more strength than I had. What I didn't know was that while doctors were trying to stabilize me, the hospital had reported what happened. Vanessa told investigators that she had thrown away expired medicine by mistake. Then she claimed I had refused to collect my replacement. By the time she finished, she had turned herself into a concerned parent and me into a reckless teenager trying to destroy her marriage. For years, that was how she won every conflict. She spoke confidently, my father avoided confrontation, and I stayed quiet because I didn't want to become another problem he had to solve. But this time, Vanessa wasn't arguing against me. She was arguing against timestamps, pharmacy records, data from my insulin pump, and several pages of nursing notes. When Detective Aisha Coleman placed those notes in front of her, Vanessa's face went white. Not because they proved my insulin had been destroyed. They proved what she knew before I ever reached the ICU. And one of those records contained something Vanessa had apparently forgotten, she said. Before I explain what the nurses documented and why that destroyed every version of the story Vanessa tried to tell, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. If you believe people deserve to be heard when someone in power tries to rewrite what happened, you're part of the community this story is for. To understand how my father's wife gained enough control to put my life at risk, I need to go back to when insulin meant something very different inside our family. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 8. At first, my father treated every glucose reading like an emergency and checked my supplies more often than I did. My mother balanced him. She taught me how to count carbohydrates, recognize warning signs, and prepare my own emergency case. When she died in a traffic accident 2 years later, that case became more than a place to keep medicine. It became proof that she had prepared me to survive without her. My father and I managed everything together after that. But beneath our routines, we made the same silent mistake. We both started hiding anything that might make the other person worry. Years later, when Vanessa entered our lives, she saw that silence and mistook it for permission. At first, her comments sounded almost harmless. She questioned why I needed backup insulin. She complained about my glucose monitor alerts. She suggested that my father had made me fearful by taking my condition too seriously. Every time I tried to explain, she accused me of resisting her authority. And every time I told my father, he asked me to give her another chance. I did, until the Friday evening she opened my medical case and decided that keeping me alive had made me weak. That Friday, my father was several hours away on a work trip. He called before leaving to remind me that he would be home late Sunday. Then he asked Vanessa whether she needed anything, kissed her goodbye, and left without noticing the medical supply case sitting beside the refrigerator. I had placed it there because I was reorganizing my backups. Whenever I opened a new vial, I checked every expiration date, counted my pump supplies, and made certain I had enough insulin to handle an emergency. That habit came from my mother. She had taught me that preparedness was not fear. It was how I protected the freedom to live normally. Vanessa saw it differently. She entered the kitchen while I was replacing the supplies and stared at the open case. Why do you need all of that? Because this is my backup insulin. You already have insulin in the pump. The pump can fail. The tubing can clog. I could drop a vial. There are several reasons I need backups. She removed one of the boxes and read the pharmacy label. You just collected this. That's the one I'm using next. And these? Emergency pens. She looked at the supplies as though she had discovered evidence that I had been lying to her. For weeks, she had been watching videos about discipline and dependency. The people in them talked about breaking unhealthy habits, eliminating excuses, and refusing to enable weakness. None of them were discussing type 1 diabetes, but Vanessa had started applying their language to me. She disliked the sound of my glucose monitor. She disliked that I carried juice in my bag. She disliked that restaurants sometimes required me to calculate what I was eating before I ordered. Most of all, she disliked that my father never debated whether I needed insulin. He had questioned many things over the years, my curfew, my grades, the people I spent time with, but never that. Vanessa pushed the box back into the case. You know your father has spent your entire life making you believe you're fragile. I'm not fragile. Then why do you panic if you don't have medicine within reach? I don't panic. I prepare. Same thing. I closed the case. That should have been the end of it. Instead, later that evening, I walked into the kitchen and found Vanessa standing at the sink with the case open. The first vial was already in her hand. I stopped so abruptly that my shoulder struck the doorway. What are you doing? She removed the cap. You need to learn that you can function without arranging your entire life around this. Put it down. You're too dependent on these shots. That is insulin. I know what it is. Then you know I need it. She tipped the vial. The liquid flowed into the sink. I moved toward her, and she lifted one hand like a traffic officer stopping a car. Don't make this into another performance. Vanessa, my body doesn't produce insulin. You have your pump. It is almost empty. You always say something is almost empty, because I refill things before they become emergencies. She poured out the second vial. The insulin made no dramatic sound. It didn't change color. It simply disappeared down the drain, while Vanessa watched me with an expression of absolute certainty. When she picked up the emergency pen, I reached for it. She pulled it away. That belongs to me. It was paid for through our insurance. It was prescribed to me. You're 17. Your father and I are responsible for deciding what is healthy for you. My doctor decides what treatment I need. That was the sentence that changed her expression. Until then, she had been self-righteous. After I said it, she became angry. She discharged the pen into the sink. There. Now perhaps you'll learn that you are capable of more than you think. I looked at the empty case, then at the pump clipped beneath my shirt. The display showed that I still had some insulin remaining, enough to buy time, but not enough to carry me safely through the weekend. My hands began trembling. Vanessa noticed and gave me a small, satisfied nod. You see? This is psychological. No, this is me understanding what you've done. I took out my phone. Who are you calling? My clinic. Your doctor's office is closed. The endocrinology service has an emergency line. Vanessa folded her arms as though she had no reason to be concerned. I walked into the living room, called the number printed inside my medical case, and waded through the recorded options. Leah Morgan answered. She had worked with my endocrinology team long enough to know my history. She knew I did not call the emergency line casually. Nora, tell me what happened. My backup insulin was destroyed. I have some left in my pump, but the reservoir won't last until Monday. Destroyed how? I looked toward the kitchen. Vanessa stood in the doorway listening. My stepmother emptied it into the sink. There was a short silence. Was that accidental? No. Leah's voice changed. It remained calm, but every word became more deliberate. She asked me how much insulin remained in the pump, whether the pump was functioning, what my glucose reading showed, and whether I had any other emergency supply. I answered each question. Then she asked to speak with Vanessa. Vanessa initially refused. She is overreacting, she said loudly enough for Leah to hear. Leah requested that I put the call on speaker. When I did, she explained that someone with type 1 diabetes could not safely stop insulin. She said my pump contained rapid-acting insulin and that once the reservoir was empty, I would have no long-acting insulin protecting me. Vanessa rolled her eyes. She has enough for tonight. That does not resolve the problem, Leah said. She requires replacement insulin before the pump runs out. Leah arranged an emergency prescription at the 24-hour pharmacy across town. She explained that she was submitting an override because the medication had been destroyed before the scheduled refill date. Then she gave Vanessa the instructions again. The insulin had to be collected that night. If my pump failed or emptied before I received it, I needed to be taken directly to the emergency department. Vanessa finally responded, I understand. Leah asked her to confirm that she would collect the prescription. I said I understand. I'll get it. Leah documented the call and told me to contact the service again if there was any delay. When the call ended, I turned off the speaker. Thank you. Vanessa stared at me. You embarrassed me. I told her what happened. You made me sound dangerous. You threw away medication that I need to live. And now you have another prescription, so your crisis is over. It will be over when I have the insulin. Vanessa took her keys from the counter. I am going. I wanted to believe that, not because I trusted her, but because believing her allowed the situation to remain a private family conflict. The alternative meant calling emergency services, reporting what she had done, and telling my father that the woman he had married had deliberately interfered with my treatment. I had spent years avoiding exactly that kind of explosion. Still, I messaged Tess. Vanessa dumped my backup insulin. The clinic sent a replacement across town. She says she's collecting it now. Tess responded almost immediately. Do you need me to come? She was away with her family for the weekend, several hours from home, but she offered to call someone nearby or contact emergency services for me. I told her Vanessa was already leaving. Tess made me promise to message when the insulin arrived. I watched Vanessa drive away at 8:30 that evening. The pharmacy was approximately 25 minutes from our house. An hour passed, then another. At 9:50, Vanessa returned carrying 2 grocery bags. There was no pharmacy bag among them. The prescription that stayed at the pharmacy. Where is it? Vanessa placed the groceries on the counter. The pharmacy refused to release it. Why? Insurance. Leah arranged an override. Well, apparently it didn't work. Did you ask them to call her? They said the office was closed. The emergency service is open. Vanessa began putting food into the refrigerator. I called the pharmacy. An automated message said my prescription was ready for collection. Vanessa heard it. That system isn't always accurate. I waited to speak with a pharmacist. The estimated hold time was more than 20 minutes. Vanessa continued unloading groceries, behaving as if the matter had ended. When a pharmacy employee finally answered, I gave my name and date of birth. Yes, the employee said. The insulin is ready. Is there an insurance problem? No. The emergency override was accepted. I looked at Vanessa. She stopped moving. Has anyone already tried to collect it? The employee checked. No, it has been ready since shortly after 8. I thanked her and ended the call. Vanessa folded one of the empty grocery bags with unnecessary care. You didn't go to the pharmacy. I did not say I went inside. You told Leah you would collect it. I went out. I decided not to drive all the way across town after dark when you still had insulin in your pump. You lied to me. I made a decision as the adult responsible for this house. You heard what Leah said. I heard a nurse repeat the same fears you have been taught since childhood. It wasn't a fear, it was a medical instruction. Vanessa's face hardened. You are not calling anyone else tonight. I picked up my phone. I'm calling Tess. You told me she is hours away. She can call her mother. She can help me arrange a ride. You are not dragging another family into this because you refuse to wait until morning. The pharmacy is open. And I said no. She held out her hand. I moved my phone behind me. It's my phone. Your father pays for it. That doesn't give you the right to stop me from getting medical care. I am not stopping you. I am telling you to wait a few hours. I should have called emergency services at that moment. For a long time afterward, people asked why I didn't. Some of them asked gently, others asked as though the answer might shift responsibility away from Vanessa. The truth was complicated but not mysterious. I was 17. The pump was still working. My glucose was in range. The prescription was ready. The car was 20 feet away. The adult responsible for me was promising that she would take me in the morning. And I had spent 3 years being taught that escalating a conflict with Vanessa made me the problem. I messaged Tess that the pharmacy had the prescription, but Vanessa wanted to wait until morning. Tess immediately replied that waiting sounded dangerous. I agreed. She offered again to call someone. Before I could answer, Vanessa stepped closer. You have 2 choices. You can stop turning this into a spectacle, or I can take the phone until your father gets home. If you take it, Leah won't be able to contact me. She has my number. That did not reassure me. I typed quickly. If I don't message tomorrow, call me. Then I locked the phone. I'm keeping it. Vanessa watched me for several seconds. Fine, but we are not discussing this again tonight. I returned to my room and checked my pump. The remaining insulin was falling at the rate I expected. It would not last through the next day. I did not sleep much. Every time the pump shifted against my skin, I checked the display. I kept hearing insulin flowing into the sink, though the house was silent. At 7 the next morning, I dressed and went downstairs. Vanessa was drinking coffee. I'm ready. For what? The pharmacy. It's Saturday. It's open. I have things to do here. This cannot wait. You still have your pump. It will be empty today. Then we will go later. What time? When I'm ready. I called the pharmacy again and confirmed the medication was still waiting. Then I contacted the emergency line and left a message requesting Leah. Vanessa watched from the kitchen table. You are determined to make people think I'm abusing you. I am trying to collect my insulin. The more panicked you become, the more you prove my point. That sentence stayed with me. She had created the danger, then used my response to that danger as evidence that I was irrational. I returned upstairs and tried my father. The call went to voicemail. I told him there had been a problem with my insulin, that a replacement was waiting, and that I needed him to call me. I kept the message deliberately calm. I was still trying to make the truth easy for everyone else to hear. Just before noon, my pump alarmed. The reservoir was nearly empty. I went downstairs again. We have to leave now. Vanessa looked at the display, then at me. You said it was almost empty yesterday, and now it is closer. So it lasted longer than you claimed. No, it lasted exactly as long as I said it would. She took her handbag from the chair. For one hopeful second, I believed we were finally leaving. Instead, she walked into the laundry room. I have a load to finish. I stood there staring after her. That was when I understood that the delay was not indecision. She was waiting for the pump to run out. The moment it became deliberate. The pump emitted its empty reservoir alarm late Saturday afternoon. It was a sound I had heard before, but never without replacement insulin within reach. I showed the display to Vanessa. "It's empty." She barely looked. "Then turn off the alarm. I need to go to the hospital." "You need to stop giving yourself permission to panic." "I have no insulin in my body except what the pump delivered earlier. This can become an emergency quickly." "You look fine." I called the clinic again. Leah returned the call while I was still in the living room. She asked whether I had collected the prescription. "No." "Why not?" I looked directly at Vanessa. "She wouldn't take me." Leah asked whether the pump still contained insulin. "It just ran out." "Then you need emergency care. Do not wait for symptoms." Vanessa reached for the phone. I stepped away. Leah's voice became firmer. "Nora, are you able to call emergency services?" "Yes." "Do that now, or have another adult take you to the emergency department immediately." Vanessa spoke over me. "I am taking her." Leah asked to confirm who was speaking. Vanessa identified herself. "You need to leave now," Leah said. "This cannot wait until tomorrow." "We're going." "Please call from the hospital when you arrive." Vanessa ended the call. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she set my phone on the table. "Get your shoes." I obeyed so quickly that I nearly stumbled on the stairs. I put on my shoes, grabbed the empty medical case, and returned to the living room. Vanessa had not moved. "Are we leaving?" "Not while you are behaving like this." "Like what?" "You told that nurse I refused to help you." "You did. I was about to take you." "You told her we were already going." "And then you started accusing me again." I stared at her. "You're refusing because I told the truth?" "I am refusing to reward manipulation." I reached for my phone. Vanessa placed her hand over it. "I'm calling an ambulance." "You will not send an ambulance to this house when there is nothing wrong with you." "There will be." She picked up the phone and held it behind her. "Give it back." "When you calm down." "My pump is empty." "Then sit down and prove you can handle discomfort without turning it into a disaster." I remember the stillness that followed. The refrigerator hummed. The dryer rotated behind the laundry room door. Sunlight crossed the floor between us. Everything looked normal. That was what frightened me most. Vanessa was not out of control. She was not shouting. She was not confused. She was making a calm decision to wait and see how sick I became. I went upstairs and opened my laptop. I tried messaging Tess through the browser, but the home network had logged me out of the application and required verification through my phone. I sent my father an email instead. "My insulin is gone. Vanessa will not take me to the pharmacy or hospital. Please call me." The message remained in the outbox longer than usual before finally showing as sent. I did not know when he would see it. That evening, my glucose monitor climbed beyond its normal range. I drank water and continued checking it. I did not eat because nausea had begun building beneath my ribs, and the thought of food made it worse. Vanessa passed my room once. "You're doing this to yourself by staring at those numbers. The numbers are high because I have no insulin. If you stopped obsessing, you might feel better." You heard Leah. I heard a nurse protecting herself from liability. She left before I could answer. Later, my father called the house. I heard Vanessa speaking to him downstairs. She told him I had an upset stomach and was angry because the pharmacy would not authorize an early refill. She said I was resting and that she had everything under control. I tried to stand. The room shifted beneath me. By the time I reached the hallway, the call had ended. "Did you tell him what you did?" Vanessa looked up from the bottom of the stairs. "I told him you were sick. Did you tell him you threw away my insulin?" "I told him there was a refill problem." "That isn't what happened. He is working. He does not need you distracting him." I left him a voicemail. "I know." My stomach tightened. "How?" His voicemail notification appeared on the shared phone account. "You listened to it?" "I made sure he had accurate information before he panicked." "You deleted it." "I corrected a misunderstanding." I held the railing because my legs felt weak. Call him back. Go to bed. Call him. You are not ordering me around in my house. I wanted to tell her that it was my house too. Instead, I concentrated on staying upright. That night, thirst became something larger than thirst. My mouth felt dry, no matter how much water I drank. My head ached, and my heart seemed to be beating too quickly. The monitor continued warning me. Vanessa closed my bedroom door so she would not have to hear it. When my body began keeping the record. By Sunday morning, standing required planning. I would sit on the edge of the bed, wait for the dizziness to ease, then move carefully toward whatever I needed. My muscles felt heavy, my stomach hurt. Every sip of water seemed to return as nausea. I found my phone on the kitchen counter while Vanessa was outside. There were missed calls from Leah and several messages from Tess. Did you get the insulin? Are you okay? Nora, answer me. I tried calling Tess, but the call went directly to voicemail. Her family was still traveling through an area with poor reception. I left a message. The pump is empty. Vanessa won't take me. I'm getting sick. Please call someone if you hear this. My voice sounded far away. I then dialed emergency services. Before the call connected, the back door opened. Vanessa crossed the kitchen and took the phone from my hand. Who are you calling? An ambulance. No. I can barely stand. You have been lying in bed all night. Of course you're weak. I'm going into ketoacidosis. You diagnosed yourself now? I know the symptoms. She disconnected the call before the operator answered. Then she placed the phone inside her handbag and zipped it closed. You are not getting this back until your father comes home. I need help. You need to stop. Those were the first words she said that made me believe I might actually die in that house. Not because they were loud or threatening, because they were final. The clinic called Vanessa's phone later that morning. I could hear Leah's voice faintly through the speaker. Vanessa walked into another room, but I followed as far as the hallway. Leah asked whether I had been taken to the emergency department. Vanessa said we had chosen to monitor my condition at home. Leah told her there was no safe home monitoring plan for a type 1 diabetic whose insulin supply had been exhausted. Vanessa claimed I still had insulin in the pump. I called from the hallway, "It's empty." Vanessa turned away. Leah heard me. She instructed Vanessa to call emergency services immediately. Vanessa said she would drive me herself. Leah asked her to repeat the instruction. Vanessa did. That became the second nursing record. At the time, it sounded like another failed conversation. Later, it became proof that Vanessa understood exactly what she was refusing to do. When the call ended, I asked for my phone. No. You just promised her you would take me. I said I heard her. You said you would take me. I will decide when. She returned to the kitchen and began cleaning. I sat on the bottom stair because I no longer had the strength to climb back to my room. Vanessa stepped around me twice. The first time she carried laundry. The second time she carried a glass of water and placed it beside me. You need to drink. I need insulin. You need both. Then take me to the hospital. You are not going to control me by refusing water. She was still interpreting every symptom as a strategy. I drank because I knew dehydration would make everything worse. Minutes later, I vomited into the downstairs bathroom sink. Vanessa stood in the doorway. You worked yourself into this state. I gripped the counter. This is what happens without insulin. If that were true, you would have collapsed yesterday. That isn't how it works. You always have an answer. I looked at my reflection. My skin was pale. My eyes appeared sunken. I could see my chest rising more deeply with each breath. The body does not negotiate with denial. It records what happens. My pump recorded when the reservoir emptied. My glucose monitor recorded the rise that followed. My heart, kidneys, blood chemistry, and lungs were recording the same truth in ways Vanessa could not see. By afternoon, I had stopped arguing. That frightened her more than anything I had said. She appeared in my doorway and asked why I was being quiet. I could not explain that speaking required energy I no longer had. She touched my forehead. "You don't have a fever." I turned my face away. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I thought about my mother then, not in a dramatic way. I did not see her or hear her voice. I remembered her hands packing my first emergency case and the patience with which she taught me to use everything inside it. She had prepared me to respond to danger. She could not have prepared me for an adult taking away every response available to me. My father called again that evening. Vanessa answered in the kitchen and told him I was asleep. He said his work had run late and that he would be home the following morning. Vanessa assured him there was no reason to drive overnight. I heard only pieces, but I understood enough. She did not want him home before she could decide what version of the weekend to give him. That night, I slept in fragments. My breathing became deep and involuntary. My stomach cramped. Sometimes I knew exactly where I was. Other times, the shadows in my room seemed detached from the furniture making them. I thought I heard my phone ringing downstairs. I tried to stand and fell beside the bed. I remained there because the floor felt cool against my face. Sometime before morning, Vanessa entered and found me. She said my name several times. I opened my eyes but could not answer. She pulled a blanket over me. Then she left me on the floor. The house could no longer hide it. Tess returned home early Monday morning. She had listened to my voicemail as soon as her phone regained service. She called me repeatedly, then called the house. Vanessa answered. Tess asked to speak with me. Vanessa said I was sleeping. Tess told her she knew my pump was empty. Vanessa claimed the problem had already been handled. Tess asked which hospital I had been taken to. Vanessa hung up. That was enough. Tess did not drive to my house because of intuition or coincidence. She came because I had told her the insulin was gone, because I had promised to message when I received it, and because Vanessa could not answer one simple question. When Tess arrived, Vanessa refused to let her inside. I learned the details later. Tess stood on the porch and said she would leave if she saw me and heard directly that I was safe. Vanessa told her she was trespassing. Tess stepped back onto the sidewalk and called emergency services. She reported that a 17-year-old with type 1 diabetes had been without insulin, had left a message describing serious symptoms, and was now being kept from outside contact. Vanessa could no longer dismiss it as family drama. Paramedics arrived with police several minutes later. Vanessa initially told them I was sleeping off a stomach illness. When they asked whether I had access to insulin, she said my medical care was private. The officers informed her that they needed to see me. By then, I had managed to pull myself partly onto the bed. I remember the bedroom door opening. A paramedic knelt beside me and asked my name. I knew the answer, but my mouth would not form it clearly. Someone placed a monitor against my finger. Another person checked my pump. I heard the word empty. A meter displayed a reading beyond its measurable range. The paramedic asked when I had last received insulin. Vanessa answered from the doorway. She stopped taking it because she was angry with me. I tried to shake my head. Tess spoke from somewhere behind the officers. She told me Vanessa dumped it out. The paramedic looked directly at Vanessa. Did you dispose of her insulin? I removed expired supplies. She had medication in her pump. When did the pump run out? I don't know. She manages that herself. That was the first time Vanessa attempted to make me entirely responsible for my care. For years, she had insisted that being the adult gave her authority over every decision. The moment consequences appeared, she described me as independent. They carried me downstairs. As the stretcher passed through the kitchen, I saw Vanessa's handbag on the counter. My phone was still inside it. The ride to the hospital survives in flashes. Cold air, a blood pressure cuff tightening around my arm, a paramedic telling me to stay awake. The ceiling lights passing above me when we entered the emergency department. Several voices asking questions I could not answer quickly enough. Blood tests confirmed severe diabetic ketoacidosis. My body had begun producing dangerous levels of acids because it could not use glucose without insulin. I was profoundly dehydrated, and my electrolytes required careful monitoring. The doctors began intravenous fluids and insulin. They transferred me to intensive care because correcting everything too quickly carried its own risks. None of that felt dramatic from inside my body. It felt slow, heavy. I remember wanting to sleep and being repeatedly told to open my eyes. I remember a nurse explaining that my father was on his way. I remember someone asking Vanessa when she first realized I did not have insulin. Her answer changed twice. First, she said she believed my pump contained enough for the weekend. Then she said I had refused to let her inspect it. Finally, when an admitting nurse asked why my emergency supplies had been emptied, Vanessa became irritated. She was too attached to them, she said. I removed the extras because she needed to learn she could function without panicking. The nurse stopped typing for 1 second. Then she asked Vanessa to repeat what she meant. Vanessa tried to soften it. She said she had been teaching responsibility. She insisted she never intended to cause harm. But the nurse documented the original statement, the clarification, and the surrounding questions. That became the third nursing record. The hospital restricted Vanessa's access to me while its social worker contacted the safeguarding authorities. My father arrived before noon. I heard him before I saw him. He was asking where I was, why nobody had called sooner, and how this had happened. Vanessa began her explanation in the corridor. She blamed the pharmacy. She blamed insurance. She blamed me. Then a nurse told him that the clinic had prepared replacement insulin on Friday and that it had never been collected. The corridor became silent. My father entered my room alone. His face looked older than it had 2 days earlier. Nora, I could not answer around the oxygen line and dry throat. He took my hand. I'm here. Those words should have comforted me. Instead, all I could think was that I had needed him before the ambulance. Every system had remembered I spent 2 days in intensive care. The insulin infusion corrected the acidosis gradually. Fluids treated the dehydration. Nurses checked my blood repeatedly, while the medical team monitored my electrolytes and heart. My thoughts cleared in pieces. The first thing I clearly remembered asking for was my phone. A nurse told me it had been recovered from Vanessa's handbag and given to my father. She asked whether I wanted him to bring it into the room. I said yes. When he returned, the screen showed missed calls, unread messages, and the email I had sent him. He had not opened it until Monday morning. He sat beside the bed while I read through everything. Tess had messaged throughout the weekend. Leah had called more than once. The pharmacy had sent a notification that the prescription was ready. My father looked at the empty medical case on the chair. A paramedic had brought it with me. Did she really pour everything out? Yes. And you told the clinic? Yes. They spoke to her? Twice. He lowered his head. Why didn't you call me? I did. His eyes moved to the voicemail list. The message was gone. She deleted it, I said. She said she corrected the misunderstanding. My father covered his mouth with one hand. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I should have known. I was too tired to protect him. You should have checked, he nodded. I should have believed you before this. Yes, I thought the two of you were having trouble adjusting. I told you what she said about my insulin. You did. You kept asking me to give her another chance. I know. I watched him struggle to find an apology large enough for the room. There wasn't one. I am so sorry, he said. I looked toward the infusion pump beside the bed. I can't tell you it's okay. I'm not asking you to. That was the first responsible thing he had done since arriving. The hospital social worker met with me once I was medically stable enough to explain what happened. My father was asked to wait outside so I could speak without pressure. I described the insulin going into the drain, the call with Leah, the uncollected prescription, the pump alarm, the second warning, and Vanessa taking my phone. I also explained the years before it, the comments, the accusations that I used my condition for attention, the times my father minimized them. The social worker did not ask why I had failed to force Vanessa to help me. She asked what resources had been available and who had prevented me from accessing them. That distinction mattered. Detective Aisha Coleman interviewed me later that day. She spoke calmly and did not begin by promising justice. She told me her responsibility was to establish what happened through evidence. Do you remember what Vanessa said when she emptied the insulin? I repeated it. Did she understand the insulin was medically necessary? She had attended appointments. Leah also explained it to her that night. Did you ever tell Vanessa you wanted to stop taking insulin? No. Did you refuse transportation? No. Did you refuse to collect the prescription? No. Did you have independent access to a vehicle? No. Did she prevent you from using your phone? Yes. Detective Coleman asked whether Tess could provide the messages I had sent. I gave permission. She asked whether the clinic could release its relevant records through the investigation. My father cooperated with every request. That did not erase his earlier failure, but it prevented another one. The evidence did not arrive as one dramatic discovery. It came from separate systems that had no reason to coordinate their stories. The pharmacy records showed that the prescription was prepared shortly after Leah's first call. The insurance override had been approved. No one attempted to collect it. My pump history showed when insulin delivery stopped. The glucose monitor data recorded the steady rise that followed. Tessa's messages showed that I had requested help before my condition became severe. The call history showed that Leah contacted Vanessa's phone on Sunday. My email to my father showed that I had tried to alert him. The hospital record contained Vanessa's claim that I had stopped insulin voluntarily, and 3 nursing records showed something more important than the medical timeline. They showed Vanessa's knowledge. Leah's first note recorded that she explained the danger of interrupted insulin and arranged the emergency prescription. It recorded Vanessa acknowledging the instructions and promising to collect it. Leah's second note recorded that the pump was empty and that I required immediate emergency evaluation. It recorded Vanessa stating that she would transport me. The admitting nurse's note recorded Vanessa admitting that she had removed the insulin because she considered me too dependent on it. 1 record could have been disputed. 3 independent records, supported by pharmacy and device data, created a chain. My father read copies after investigators obtained them. He sat in the hospital family room for almost an hour before returning. What did she say? I asked. I told her not to come back to the house. Did she agree? No. That sounded like Vanessa. My father had contacted an attorney and begun the separation process. He had also agreed to a safety plan preventing Vanessa from contacting me directly. She says this is all being twisted, he said. Do you believe her? No. He answered quickly, but I still heard the weight behind it. Do you believe me? I asked. Yes. You didn't before. I believed parts of what you said. I just kept choosing the explanation that required the least from me. That was more honest than another apology. He had not wanted Vanessa to be dangerous, so he had treated every warning as a misunderstanding. His avoidance had protected his marriage until the cost was measured in IV lines, blood tests, and an intensive care bed. I don't know what happens between us now, I said. I understand. No, I mean it. I don't know if I can live in that house and trust that someone will help me. She will never be in that house again. That doesn't change what already happened. No. He looked at the empty supply case. I will do whatever you need. I need you not to make me decide how to fix your guilt. His eyes filled, but he nodded. All right. For once, he allowed my pain to remain mine. What the nurses had written, Vanessa agreed to a formal interview because she believed she could explain everything. I was still in the hospital when it happened. Detective Coleman later described the interview to me, and months afterward, I read the transcript as part of the case. Vanessa arrived composed. She said the entire situation had resulted from a misunderstanding amplified by a frightened teenager. She claimed that some of the insulin was expired and that she had disposed of it while reorganizing my supplies. Detective Coleman asked whether she had emptied the insulin into the sink. Vanessa said she might have emptied one vial but did not remember the exact amount. She denied touching the emergency pen. Then Detective Coleman showed her the photograph of my empty supply case and the pharmacy inventory associated with my prescription history. Vanessa changed her answer. She admitted removing the supplies, but insisted she believed my pump contained enough insulin. "Who told you that?" Detective Coleman asked. "Nora said she had insulin in the pump. Did she tell you how long it would last?" "She constantly said it was almost empty." "She says things like that when she wants attention." Detective Coleman asked whether Vanessa had spoken with my endocrinology clinic. Vanessa said she remembered a brief call but denied receiving any urgent warning. She claimed Leah had simply recommended that the prescription be collected when convenient. Detective Coleman placed the first nursing note on the table. The note was time-stamped Friday evening. It identified the destroyed insulin, documented the amount remaining in my pump, and recorded Leah's instruction that replacement insulin be collected that night. It also recorded Vanessa's response. She understood. She would collect it. Detective Coleman allowed her to read the entire note. Vanessa said Leah had misunderstood her. Then the detective placed the pharmacy record beside it. The prescription had been prepared shortly after the call. The insurance override had been approved. The medication remained uncollected all weekend. Vanessa blamed the pharmacy employee. She said someone had told her the prescription could not be released. Detective Coleman showed her the call record indicating that I had spoken directly with the pharmacy and confirmed it was ready. Then she showed her the message I sent Tess. "Vanessa dumped my backup insulin. The clinic sent a replacement across town. She says she's collecting it now." The message was sent before Vanessa left the house. A second message followed after she returned. "The pharmacy has it. She won't take me until morning." Vanessa stopped describing the disposal as an accident. Instead, she argued that she had the authority to decide whether a 17-year-old needed emergency treatment. That was when Detective Coleman presented the second nursing record. The Sunday note documented Leah asking whether I had reached the hospital. It recorded Vanessa falsely stating that we had chosen to monitor my condition at home. It recorded Leah explaining that home monitoring was unsafe without insulin. It recorded me calling from the hallway that the pump was empty. And it recorded Vanessa repeating the instruction that I required immediate emergency evaluation before promising to transport me. Vanessa read that page twice. She asked whether Leah had recorded the call. Detective Coleman explained that the written note was part of my medical record and that other evidence independently confirmed the sequence. Vanessa's face began losing color, but the detective had not yet shown her the final note. Vanessa continued insisting that she had believed I was exaggerating. She said I had remained conscious, had been drinking water, and did not appear to require an ambulance. Detective Coleman asked what happened when I attempted to call one. Vanessa said she did not remember. The phone recovery record showed that my device had been found inside her zipped handbag. She claimed I had placed it there. Detective Coleman then presented the admitting nurse's note. It documented Vanessa's changing explanations at the hospital. It recorded her initial claim that I had stopped insulin because I was angry. It recorded her admission that she had removed the backup supplies. Most importantly, it recorded the reason she gave before she understood that her words were being preserved. She considered me too attached to insulin and wanted me to learn that I could function without it. That was the moment her face went white. The records did not merely prove that insulin had been thrown away, they proved she had received repeated warnings, promised corrective action, prevented that action, watched my condition worsen, concealed the truth from my father, blocked my attempt to call for help, and then lied after I entered intensive care. Vanessa finally understood what the nurses' notes had done. They had preserved the version of her that existed before she had time to invent a defense. She stopped answering questions and requested an attorney. Detective Coleman did not argue with her. She collected the papers, ended the interview, and forwarded the completed evidence file for charging review. There was no dramatic arrest in the interview room. There was no instant judgment. The process moved more slowly than my anger wanted it to. Medical specialists reviewed the records and confirmed that the interruption of insulin had directly caused the diabetic ketoacidosis. Investigators verified the pharmacy timeline and device data. The safeguarding authorities confirmed that I could not safely share a home with Vanessa. Then prosecutors filed charges based on medical endangerment, interference with essential treatment, and her efforts to obstruct outside help. Vanessa's version of the weekend had finally encountered something it could not intimidate: a record. What survival actually looked like. I left intensive care after 2 days, but I did not leave the hospital immediately. My body was exhausted. Walking to the bathroom felt like completing a long-distance race. My arms were bruised from blood draws and IV lines. The medical crisis had been corrected, but recovery required more than getting my glucose back into range. I also discovered that safety could become frightening after someone had deliberately removed it. Every time a nurse replaced an insulin bag, I watched. Every time my pump alarmed, my heart accelerated. When someone moved my medical case, I needed to know where it had gone. The hospital arranged counseling before discharge. The counselor described those reactions as understandable after medical trauma. I had always associated competence with calmness. Now I had to learn that fear did not erase competence. Tess visited as soon as the hospital allowed it. She stood beside the bed holding my recovered phone. I should have called someone Friday. You were hours away. I still should have. Vanessa told both of us she was handling it. Tess shook her head. I knew something was wrong. You came when you had enough information. That almost wasn't soon enough. Neither of us could change that. I asked her not to turn the weekend into a reason to monitor every decision I made. I need a friend, I said, not another person deciding what I can handle. She understood. That was the difference between care and control. Care listened, control assumed. My father spent most of the hospital stay in a chair near the window. He handled calls with the attorney, the insurance company, the pharmacy, and the investigators. He did not ask me to participate unless my decision was required. Before discharge, he showed me the new safety plan. Vanessa no longer had access to the house. The locks had been changed. Her belongings had been removed under supervision. She was prohibited from contacting me directly. My father had arranged secure insulin storage in more than one location. The pharmacy had added protections to my account. My clinic had documented approved emergency contacts, and Tess was included only because I requested it. You don't have to come home if you don't feel safe, he said. Where would I go? We can arrange something temporary. I will stay somewhere else if you need the house without me. The offer hurt more than I expected. A week earlier, he had assumed his presence made the house safe. Now he understood that he could not declare safety on my behalf. I'll come home, I said. But this isn't fixed. I know, and I'm keeping control of my medication. Yes. You don't move it. You don't check it without asking. You don't give anyone access. Yes. If I say something is wrong, you listen before you decide whether it is convenient. He looked down. Yes. I returned to the house carrying a temporary insulin kit provided by the hospital. The kitchen had been cleaned, but I could still see the sink where the insulin disappeared. My father offered to replace it. I told him not to. The sink had not done anything wrong. For the first few nights, I slept with the medical case beside my bed. Later, I moved it to a locked drawer. Then, after more time, I placed the daily supplies on my desk where they were easiest to reach. Recovery did not happen in one brave decision. It happened through small choices that taught my body it was no longer trapped. My father began therapy. He also attended diabetes education again, not because he had forgotten how insulin worked, but because he needed to confront how easily he had allowed another person's confidence to outweigh my knowledge. He did not ask me to attend therapy with him. He did not bring home grand gifts or make promises about becoming a perfect father. He started with ordinary things. He knocked before entering my room. He asked before touching my medical supplies. When I told him something made me uncomfortable, he did not explain why I should feel differently. Sometimes that made me angrier. It showed how little effort listening had always required. One evening, he asked whether I thought I would ever forgive him. I don't know. He nodded. I can live with that. You have to. I know. That was the shape our relationship took, not repaired, not destroyed, under reconstruction, with no promise that it would ever look the way it had before. The consequences. Vanessa could not rewrite. The legal case continued for months. Vanessa initially maintained that she had been trying to teach responsibility. Her attorney argued that she misunderstood the medical danger and panicked once I became sick. The records contradicted both claims. A misunderstanding might have explained the first minute at the sink. It could not explain the first nursing warning. It could not explain the prepared prescription she left at the pharmacy. It could not explain the second warning. It could not explain taking my phone. It could not explain lying to my father or blaming me at the hospital. Each decision narrowed the space available for innocence. Medical experts explained that my pump used rapid-acting insulin and that, once delivery stopped, I had no long-acting insulin protecting me. They connected the device history to my laboratory results and the timing of my collapse. The evidence did not depend on whether a jury found Vanessa likable. It depended on what she knew and what she chose to do. Before the case reached trial, she accepted a plea involving felony medical endangerment. The court imposed a custodial sentence followed by supervised restrictions. She was ordered to pay restitution related to expenses not covered through insurance, comply with treatment requirements, and remain away from me. I submitted a written impact statement. I did not describe Vanessa as a monster. That would have made the story easier than it was. She had been an organized, functioning adult. She paid bills on time, remembered appointments, and presented herself as responsible. She did not harm me because she was incapable of understanding instructions. She harmed me because accepting those instructions would have required admitting that my body possessed needs her authority could not change. I wrote about waking in intensive care. I wrote about hearing my father's voice and feeling no relief. I wrote about watching every insulin bag after hospitalization because safety no longer felt permanent. Most of all, I wrote that Vanessa had tried to turn dependence on medication into a moral failure. The court did not give me back the weekend. It did not erase the fear or rebuild my relationship with my father. Consequences are not the same thing as restoration. But they established something my family had failed to establish on its own. What Vanessa did was not discipline. It was not strict parenting. It was not a disagreement over how independent I should be. It was endangerment. My father's divorce proceeded separately. Vanessa accused him of abandoning her when she needed support. She said he was choosing me because he felt guilty. Perhaps guilt was part of what finally moved him, but he did not return. He provided requested information through attorneys and stopped discussing the case with me unless I asked. When relatives contacted him with questions, he gave them the documented facts instead of asking me to defend myself. Some believed Vanessa initially. She had spent years presenting herself as the person holding our household together. Then the records became harder to explain away. The relatives who had repeated her claim that I was unstable grew quiet. A few apologized. Others simply stopped calling. I learned not to measure truth by how many people admitted they had been wrong, Vanessa lost control of the narrative, but that did not mean everyone suddenly became honest. The case my mother taught me to carry. As college approached, my endocrinology team helped me build an independent emergency plan. I transferred prescription access into accounts that only I controlled. I created backup contacts. I arranged secure insulin storage in my dorm and confirmed where I could obtain emergency replacements near campus. Tess remained one of my contacts because I asked her. My father was another, but he understood that his name on the list was a responsibility, not ownership. The old medical case had been recovered from the kitchen after my hospitalization. Its lining still carried a faint medicinal smell, but everything inside it was gone. For weeks, I could not decide whether to keep it. Part of me wanted to throw it away, so I would never see it empty again. Another part remembered my mother placing my first supplies inside it. She had never taught me to be ashamed of insulin. She had taught me to understand it, so I cleaned the case. I placed fresh backup insulin inside, along with pump supplies, emergency instructions, glucose treatment, pharmacy information, and the contact list I had chosen. My father watched from the doorway, but did not enter. "Do you need help?" "No." "All right." He walked away. A few minutes later, I opened the case again and checked everything. Not because I was panicking. Because preparation was still preparation. Vanessa had tried to redefine my need for insulin as weakness. For a while, I feared that surviving her would leave me desperate to prove I needed nobody. That would only have been another version of her belief. Independence did not mean pretending my body required nothing. It meant understanding what I needed and refusing to let someone else use access to it as power. On the morning I left for college, my father carried one suitcase to the car and waited while I locked the house. Our relationship was better than it had been in the hospital, but different from before. He had stopped asking when things would return to normal. There was no old normal worth returning to. There was only whatever we built next. Before getting into the car, I opened my bag and checked the medical case one final time. The insulin was there, the pharmacy information was there, my emergency contacts were there. Everything had a place and every choice belonged to me. I closed the case and carried it openly. I was dependent on insulin. I always would be, but I was no longer dependent on anyone who needed me to become smaller, quieter, or sicker so they could feel powerful. That was the kind of strength my mother had prepared me for, and this time, nobody else held the